After months of stonewalling by House Speaker Mike Johnson, Congress finally voted Tuesday to compel the Justice Department to release the files on Jeffrey Epstein, the deceased convicted sex offender and power broker.
Congress doesn't often speak with one voice, but on this day, it nearly did. 427-1, a vote to force the release of the Epstein files. Document survivors have been waiting decades to see brought into the open. What stands out isn't just the vote itself, but the emotion in the room, survivors watching from above, holding one another, finally witnessing action rather than sympathy. For months there was resistance, delay, hesitation. Yet under public scrutiny, political pressure, and moral demand, momentum shifted. Even a former president who initially opposed transparency reversed course when the tide changed. At the heart of this moment is something rare in American politics, a sense that truth may finally outweigh power. Because when survivors speak with clarity and unity, institutions begin to move. This vote wasn't closure, but it was a beginning. Before we dive into the full story, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, all that in mind, let's walk through the clips to the show, and along the way I will break down not just what was said, but what was really going on in the next studio. Now let's get into it.
After months of stonewalling by House Speaker Mike Johnson, Congress finally voted Tuesday to compel the Justice Department to release the files on Jeffrey Epstein, the deceased convicted sex offender and power broker. The House vote was unanimous, except for one. That's 427-1 in favor of releasing the files. Republican Congressman Clay Higgins of Louisiana was the lone no vote. Several survivors of Epstein's abuse were seated in the gallery during the vote and embraced, cheering when it passed. The Senate then voted unanimously to pass the House bill. It's a stunning outcome after months of fierce opposition by President Trump and Republican Party. Trump reversed course over the weekend when he saw too many defections and said he would sign the bill. Ahead of the vote, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse held a news conference on Capitol Hill. These are some of their voices.
My name is Lisa Phillips. It's an honor to stand here again for something America is finally united on: the immediate release of the entire Epstein files. In a divided nation, this is one demand we all share. So today, we are launching something historic: the first national survivor-led political movement in America. Nonpartisan, laser-focused on exposing the systems, the loopholes, power structures, and silencing mechanisms that have protected predators for far too long. We are stepping directly into the halls of power, into the political arena. We will help rewrite laws that failed us and build protections for our nation's children together, targeted by sexual exploitation. Together, today, survivors begin our own fight, the survivor revolution. And we intend to change this nation for the better.
The most striking element in this transcript isn't Congress, it's the survivors themselves. They walked into the halls of government not as victims seeking pity, but as leaders demanding transparency. They named the system that failed them: loopholes, power networks, silencing mechanisms, and they announced something historic: the first national survivor-led political movement. Their voices were steady, their message sharp. Accountability has no party label. Abuse of children is not Republican or Democrat. It is a moral wound allowed to deepen when institutions refuse to act. Their stories are painful, their youth stolen, but their purpose now is clear: prevent this from happening again. For decades, files remained hidden. Investigations stalled. Evidence sat behind walls of power. Now, those who were once powerless are pushing those walls outward. This moment is more than legislative. It's generational.
Hello, everybody. I am Lisa Jones. This was me at 14 years old. I was a child. I was in 9th grade. I was hopeful for life and what the future had held for me. He stole a lot from me by at 14. Sexual abuse is not a Republican issue. It is not a Democratic issue. It is also not a hoax. We are here as American survivors of a man who used his wealth and power to hurt young girls and women. The world should see the files to know who Jeffrey Epstein was and how the system catered to him and failed us. Emotionally, this process has been distressing. First, the administration said it would release everything and applauded President Trump for that. Then it fought to release nothing.
Good morning. My name is Annie Farmer, and this is a photo of me and my sister Maria Farmer. Around the time I was 16 and she was 25. That's how old we were when we were abused by Epstein and Maxwell. This is not an issue of a few corrupt Democrats or a few corrupt Republicans. This is a case of institutional betrayal. Because these crimes were not properly investigated, so many more girls and women were harmed. My sister, because of her bravery, was repeatedly threatened and lived in fear, with dire consequences for her health and her career. 30 years later, even as oceans of allegations and obvious truths have emerged, the government has still not chosen transparency. This is why we have all come together as one united voice to demand the release of all the Epstein files and to finally bring the truth out of the shadows.
Annie Farmer's sister, Mary Farmer, first reported Jeffrey Epstein's abuse to the FBI in 1996, nearly 30 years ago. The survivors of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's abuse were speaking at a Capitol Hill news conference ahead of the House and Senate votes to force the DOJ to release the Epstein files. Unanimous in the Senate, only one dissenting vote in the House.
Listening to Annie Farmer speak, you feel the weight of time. Nearly 30 years since her sister first reported Epstein. 3 decades of fear, threats, and a government that chose silence over protection. The transcript calls it institutional betrayal. And there may not be a more accurate phrase. Not because a few officials failed, but because the system, the whole structure, allowed abuse to continue unchecked. Only now, after oceans of testimony and mountains of evidence, are these files finally being pried open. A unanimous Senate vote, a near-unanimous House, the gallery, erupting into tears as history briefly shifted. This moment is about more than one man. It's about how power shields itself, how justice can sleep when victims scream. Releasing the files is not justice on its own, but it is light, and light is where accountability begins.